Dr. Zix'tharr, lead xenobiologist of the Galactic Science Institute, prided himself on his composure. 6 doctorates, 300 published papers, and a lifetime of dealing with the most bizarre lifeforms the universe had to offer had given him nerves of steel. Or so he thought. But as he watched the human casually sip from a mug of steaming liquid, his usually stoic mandibles began to twitch uncontrollably. His research assistant, Gloop, a sentient slime mold with a penchant for terrible puns, oozed anxiously beside him, forming worried bubbles that popped with little squeaks of distress. "Dr. Zix'tharr," Gloop burbled, "is the Deathworlder, is it drinking poison?" Zix'tharr's compound eyes darted between his datapad and the oblivious human, who was now scrolling through something on a primitive electronic device, while continuing to ingest what, by all accounts, should be a lethal substance. "It appears so, Gloop," Zix'tharr chittered, his antennae vibrating with a mixture of horror and fascination. "According to our scans, that beverage contains high levels of a compound known as caffeine. It's a potent neurotoxin, fatal to most carbon-based lifeforms in the galaxy." The human, a female specimen named Sarah, looked up from her device and grinned at the alien scientists. "You guys want some coffee? It's a fresh pot." Gloop recoiled so violently that several droplets of his being splattered against the observation window. "And no thank you," he gurgled. "We choose life." Sarah shrugged, taking another long sip. "Suit yourselves. More for me." Zix'tharr's mandibles clicked rapidly as he furiously input notes into his datapad. "Fascinating, the subject shows no signs of distress. Heart rate slightly elevated, but within normal parameters for the species. No indication of imminent organ failure or neural degradation. Maybe it's a fluke," Gloop suggested hopefully. "A genetic anomaly. Surely not all humans can withstand such potent toxins." As if on cue, the laboratory door slid open with a hiss. Another human, this one a tall male specimen, strode in. "Hey Sarah, is that the good stuff from the break room? Pour me a cup, would ya?" Sarah nodded, reaching for another mug. "Sure thing, Dave. Want it black, or should I add some cream and sugar?" "Ooh, cream and sugar me up, baby," Dave laughed. "If I'm gonna poison myself, might as well make it taste good, right?" The two humans shared a chuckle, completely oblivious to the existential crisis they were inducing in their alien observers. Zix'tharr's datapad clattered to the floor as his limbs went slack with shock. Gloop, ever the helpful assistant, quickly formed a puddle to cushion the device's fall. They know it's poison?" Zix'tharr whispered, his voice a mix of awe and terror. "And they consume it voluntarily?" "Hey, you okay there, Doc?" Sarah called out, noticing the alien's distress. "You're looking a little green around the gills." "Well, greener than usual, I guess." Dave snorted into his coffee. Maybe they need some caffeine to perk him up. The human's laughter echoed through the lab, a soundtrack to the dawning realization that everything the Galactic Science Institute thought they knew about biology, evolution, and the limits of organic life might be wrong. Gloop, ever the voice of reason, or at least the voice of panicked self-preservation, began to ooze towards the emergency exit. "Dr. Zix'tharr," he bubbled urgently, "perhaps we should relocate. To a safer distance? Perhaps another solar system?" But Zix'tharr was beyond hearing. His scientific mind, honed by centuries of study, was racing through the implications. But if humans could so casually ingest neurotoxins for pleasure, what other death-defying feats were they capable of? What other impossible biological tricks did these Deathworlders have up their sleeves? "More data," Zix'tharr mumbled, his eyes glazing over as he entered a full-blown scientific fugue state. "Need more samples." Sarah and Dave exchanged glances, then shrugged. "Aliens, am I right?" Sarah chuckled, taking another sip of her coffee. "Always so dramatic." Dave nodded sagely. "Wait till they see what happens when I eat dairy. That'll really blow their minds." As the humans continued their casual consumption of toxins, blissfully unaware of the paradigm shift they had just induced in galactic scientific understanding, Zix'tharr finally snapped out of his daze. With a manic gleam in his compound eyes, he snatched up his datapad and began furiously typing. "Gloop," he chittered excitedly. "Prepare the lab. Cancel all other experiments. From this moment on, we dedicate ourselves to understanding these coffee drinkers." Gloop, who had managed to ooze halfway to the exit, reluctantly flowed back towards his manic supervisor. "Oh, great," he burbled sarcastically. "And here I thought we might live to see next galactic cycle. Silly me." Sarah, overhearing this, grinned and held up her mug in a mock toast. "To science," she declared. "To science," Dave echoed, clinking his mug against hers. To the probable end of my existence, Gloop muttered, forming a tiny pseudopod in a half-hearted imitation of the human gesture. Zix'tharr, too engrossed in his frenzied note-taking to notice, simply chittered in agreement. The Galactic Science Institute would never be the same again. 3 Galactic Standard months later, the main auditorium of the Galactic Science Institute was packed to the brim with beings from across the known universe. Tentacles, antennae, and various sensory organs quivered with anticipation as Dr. Zix'tharr took the stage, his carapace polished to a high shine for the occasion. Esteemed colleagues, he began, his voice amplified by the room's acoustic enhancers, today we stand on the precipice of a new era in xenobiology. Our recent studies of the species known as humans have yielded results that can only be described as revolutionary. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Zix'tharr paused, allowing the tension to build. In the front row, Gloop burbled nervously, a small sign clutched in one of his pseudopods reading "Safety First, no human experiments." For millennia, Zix'tharr continued, we have classified planets based on their habitability, from the paradise worlds of the Syrexian cluster to the gas giants of the void realm. But none have fascinated us more than the so-called death worlds, planets so hostile to life that we believe nothing sentient could possibly evolve there. He clicked a small device, and a holographic image of Earth appeared above the stage. Gasps and alarmed chirps echoed the auditorium as the assembled scientists took in the swirling atmosphere, vast oceans, and terrifyingly diverse ecosystems. Earth, Zix'tharr announced, his mandibles quivering with excitement. Home of humanity. A planet we long thought too dangerous to even approach. And yet, not only have humans survived there, they have thrived. Another click and the hologram changed to show a human skeleton. Their bodies are reinforced with an internal calcium structure, allowing them to withstand impacts that would shatter most species. Click. A diagram of human skin appeared. Their outer layer is constantly shedding and regenerating, providing protection against radiation and microorganisms. Click. A human digestive system, highlighted in lurid colors, and their digestive tract, oh colleagues, their digestive tract is nothing short of miraculous, capable of processing a wide variety of organic matter, including substances most of us would consider highly toxic. At this, Gloop's sign began to wobble more insistently. A few of the scientists nearest to him began to edge away, forming a small clearing around the anxious slime mold. But today, Zix'tharr said, his voice dropping to a dramatic whisper, we will demonstrate the most shocking discovery of all. A feat of biological impossibility that will forever change how we view the potential of organic life. He gestured off stage, and a ripple of alarm spread through the audience as Sarah and Dave strolled out, each carrying a steaming mug. These brave human volunteers, Zix'tharr announced, are about to consume a beverage they call coffee. A concoction so potent, so rich in neurotoxins that by all rights it should kill them instantly. And yet, Sarah, grinning at the camera drones hovering nearby, took a long, deliberate sip of her coffee. Dave followed suit, adding a little that's good, for dramatic effect. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Scientists leapt from their seats, some rushing for the exits, others pressing forward for a closer look. A Volaxian physicist fainted, his gelatinous body making a loud splat as it hit the floor. In the back, a group of Zygonian researchers began chanting what sounded suspiciously like an end-of-the-world prophecy. Colleagues, please, Zix'tharr shouted over the din. Remain calm. As you can see, the humans are perfectly fine. In fact, he trailed off as he turned to Sarah and Dave, who had wandered over to the snack table set up for the post-presentation reception. Oh, sweet merciful nebulas, Zix'tharr muttered. They're eating now, too. Indeed, the two humans were casually munching on an assortment of foods clearly labeled not for human consumption. Sarah was particularly enjoying something that looked like it might once have been alive and possibly carnivorous. Hey, Doc, Dave called out, his mouth full of what appeared to be fossilized Andromedum swamp fungus. This spread is great. What do you call these little wiggling things? Before Zix'tharr could answer, or more likely pass out from shock, a commotion near the front of the auditorium caught everyone's attention. Gloop, apparently deciding that desperate times called for desperate measures, had begun to rapidly expand. That's it. The slime mold burbled, his voice deepening as his mass increased. I've had enough. No more dangerous experiments, no more toxic humans. I'm putting a stop to this madness. As the panicked audience watched, Gloop continued to grow, engulfing chairs, equipment, and more than a few slower-moving scientists. His gelatinous form rose towards the ceiling, pseudopods flailing dramatically. Should we do something? Sarah asked, pausing mid-bite of her possibly still alive appetizer. Dave shrugged, washing down his mouthful of ancient fungus with a swig of coffee. Nah, I'm sure the doc has it under control. Besides, this is the most fun I've had since that time we showed them what happens when humans drink alcohol. Zix'tharr, for his part, was torn between scientific fascination at Gloop's unprecedented growth and very real concern for the structural integrity of the auditorium. Gloop, he chittered urgently. You must calm down. Think of the data. Hang the data, Gloop's voice boomed, now emanating from a quivering mass that filled nearly half the room. I'm not going to stand by and watch you get us all killed in the name of science. As chaos reigned and the great slime mold insurrection threatened to engulf them all, Sarah turned to Dave with a mischievous glint in her eye. Hey, she said, you think now's a good time to show them what happens when humans eat spicy food? Dave's answering grin was positively wicked. Oh, hell yes. Hey, Doc, he called out to the frazzled Zix'tharr. You got any of those inferno peppers from Proxima Centauri b? Zix'tharr, distracted from his attempts to reason with the ever-expanding Gloop, blinked in confusion. The Proxima Centauri inferno peppers. But those are classified as a chemical weapon in 17-star systems. Perfect, Sarah said, rubbing her hands together gleefully. Bring him on. As Zix'tharr reluctantly produced a small, highly secure container holding the dreaded peppers, a hush fell over the auditorium. Even Gloop paused in his rampage, curiosity momentarily overriding his panic. With great ceremony, Dave selected one of the peppers, a small, unassuming thing that glowed with an ominous red light. He held it up for all to see. Then, with a wink at the stunned audience, popped it into his mouth and began to chew. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, Holy Mother of Dave's exclamation was cut off as he began to hop from foot to foot, fanning his mouth frantically. Water, I need water. Sarah, cackling madly, tossed him a bottle. Dave chugged it desperately, then froze, a look of utter betrayal crossing his face. This is vodka, he gasped. Oops, Sarah said, not looking sorry at all. My bad. As Dave continued his spice-induced dance, alternating between chugs of vodka and increasingly creative curse words, the assembled alien scientists watched in horror and fascination. Zix'tharr's mandibles worked silently, his scientific mind struggling to process what he was seeing. A few of the braver researchers had produced scanning devices, which were now emitting alarmed beeps as they registered the frankly impossible biological reactions taking place in Dave's body. It's metabolizing the capsaicin, one Sorexian botanist exclaimed, and in the ethanol. Simultaneously, how is this possible? Fascinating, Zix'tharr muttered, his earlier panic giving way to intense scientific curiosity. The human digestive system appears to be converting these toxic substances into really good time. Sarah supplied helpfully, watching as Dave's dance became increasingly energetic. I can see sounds, Dave shouted joyfully, his face flushed and eyes wild. The colors, Sarah. The colors are so loud. Gloop, who had been watching the proceedings with a mix of horror and reluctant interest, began to slowly shrink back to his normal size. I don't understand, he burbled. By all rights, that humans should be dead, or at least in excruciating pain. But he seems to be enjoying himself. Sarah patted one of Gloop's retracting pseudopods consolingly. Welcome to the weird and wonderful world of humanity, buddy, where our idea of a good time would qualify as chemical warfare on most planets. As if to punctuate her point, Dave let out a whoop of delight and began to breakdance. Poorly. This changes everything, Zix'tharr said, his voice filled with awe. Our entire understanding of biology, of the limits of organic life, it all must be reevaluated. The assembled scientists murmured in agreement, their initial fear now replaced by burning curiosity. Datapads appeared in various appendages as they began to furiously record their observations. Oh no, Gloop moaned, realizing the Pandora's box that had just been opened. There'll be no stopping them now. Humanity's most horrifying attributes, and they want to study them. Sarah grinned, throwing an arm around the reluctant slime molds. Well, what passed for shoulders? Cheer up, Gloop. Think of all the fun we'll have. There's so much more to show you guys. Wait till you see what happens when we stay awake for 3 days straight on nothing but energy drinks and determination. As the sounds of Dave's continued spice and vodka-fueled dance party filled the auditorium, Zix'tharr's scientific mind raced with the possibilities. He turned to Sarah, his compound eyes glittering with a manic intensity that would have sent any sane being running for the nearest escape pod. Tell me, he chittered excitedly, what other substances do humans regularly consume for fun? Sarah's grin widened to truly alarming proportions. Oh boy, where do I even start? We've got alcohol in about 1,000,000 different flavors, some of which we set on fire before drinking. A collective gasp rose from the assembled scientists. Gloop, who had finally managed to compact himself back to his normal size, began to ooze slowly towards the exit again. Then there's energy drinks, Sarah continued, warming to her topic. Basically coffee's angry, hyperactive cousin. Oh, and don't forget recreational drugs. Some of us like to inhale burning plant matter for a good time. Zix'tharr's mandibles clicked so rapidly they became a blur. Burning plant matter. Inhaled. But the respiratory damage alone should be fatal? Sarah finished for him. Yeah, you'd think so, wouldn't you? But hey, we're full of surprises. At that moment, Dave decided to contribute to the impromptu human biology seminar. Don't forget extreme sports, he shouted, pausing in his interpretive spice dance. Nothing says good time like hurling yourself off a tall object with only a bit of fabric to slow your fall. The Sharuxian botanist who had been scanning Dave earlier promptly fainted, his fall cushioned by Gloop, who had given up on escaping and resigned himself to damage control. Fascinating. Zix'tharr exclaimed, his carapace practically vibrating with excitement. And these activities, they're common among your species. Sarah shrugged. Common enough. Some humans spend their whole lives chasing bigger and better thrills. You should see our extreme eating contests. A Zigonian researcher in the back, who had finally stopped chanting long enough to listen, raised a tentacle. Extreme eating contests, it gurgled hesitantly. Oh yeah, Dave chimed in, his face still flushed from the inferno pepper but his speech surprisingly coherent. We compete to see who can eat the most food in the shortest time, or the spiciest, or the most disgusting. Really, if you can eat it, someone's made a contest out of it. The auditorium erupted into a cacophony of shocked exclamations, hurried note-taking, and what sounded suspiciously like a few quiet stress vomits from the more sensitive species present. Zix'tharr, however, was in his element. Incredible. The human digestive system must be remarkably adaptable to handle such diverse and potentially harmful inputs. And your pain tolerance, it defies all known biological limits. Sarah beamed proudly. You ain't seen nothing yet, Doc. Wait till I tell you about the time Dave here tried to break the world record for most ghost peppers eaten in one sitting. Dave groaned at the memory. I saw through time, Sarah. I tasted colors and smelled sounds. I'm pretty sure I briefly achieved enlightenment, right before my stomach tried to achieve escape velocity. Gloop, who had been uncharacteristically quiet for the past few minutes, suddenly spoke up. Dr. Zix'tharr, he burbled cautiously, perhaps we should consider the ethical implications of further human-based experiments. But Zix'tharr was beyond hearing. His eyes had taken on a glazed, faraway look that Sarah recognized all too well from her university days, the look of a scientist on the verge of a potentially Nobel Prize-winning, or in this case, Galactic Science Medal-winning, breakthrough. Think of the applications. Zix'tharr chittered, more to himself than anyone else. If we could isolate the genetic factors that allow humans to process these toxins, the advancements in medicine alone would revolutionize healthcare across the galaxy. Dave, who had finally stopped dancing and was now sprawled in a chair nursing a bottle of water, actual water this time, much to his relief, perked up. Oh yeah, our livers are pretty amazing. They can take a beating and keep on ticking. Usually. This casual statement sent another wave of murmurs through the crowd. A Volaxian biochemist tentatively raised a pseudopod. You mean to say your bodies can repair organ damage caused by voluntary toxin ingestion? Sarah nodded. To a point, yeah. It's not like we're invincible or anything, but we can bounce back from stuff that probably kill most species. Zix'tharr's antennae quivered with excitement. Incredible. The regenerative capabilities alone, we must begin a full genetic analysis immediately. Gloop, prepare the lab. We'll need volunteers for a battery of tests. Now hold on just a minute, Gloop interrupted, his gelatinous form rippling with alarm. Dr. Zix'tharr, may I remind you of the Galactic Ethics Code? Section 7, subsection 3, no sentient being shall be subjected to potentially harmful experiments without. Oh, loosen up, Gloop. Sarah laughed, giving the worried slime mold a friendly pat that sent ripples through his entire being. We're volunteers. Besides, half of this stuff is just a normal Friday night for us. Dave nodded sagely. It's true. You should see what happens when we mix energy drinks and spicy food challenges. Now that's a party. The assembled scientists collectively leaned forward, a gleam of terrified fascination in various eye analogues. Zix'tharr looked like he might molt from sheer excitement. A party? He chittered questioningly. Is this another form of human endurance test? Sarah and Dave exchanged a look, then burst out laughing. Oh man, Sarah wheezed, wiping a tear from her eye, you guys have no idea. Okay, picture this. It's 2 a.m. You've had way too much caffeine and alcohol. As Sarah launched into a detailed and only slightly embellished description of a typical human college party, complete with Dave's helpful interjections and improvised reenactments, the alien scientists listened with a mixture of horror, fascination, and growing respect. Gloop, realizing he was fighting a losing battle, simply oozed into a resigned puddle. I suppose, he burbled quietly, if we're going to study these Deathworlders, we might as well do it properly. For science. Zix'tharr, overhearing this, chittered in agreement. Yes, for science. And who knows? Perhaps by understanding the remarkable resilience of humans, we can unlock new potentials in our own species. As the impromptu lecture on human party habits continued, with Sarah now explaining the intricacies of dance and Dave demonstrating his best, still terrible, breakdancing moves, a sense of excitement began to replace the earlier panic in the auditorium. Datapads were produced, notes were taken, and more than a few surreptitious bets were placed on how long it would take before someone convinced the humans to demonstrate their alcohol tolerance. The Galactic Science Institute would never be the same again. But then again, neither would the humans' Friday nights, now that they had an eager audience of alien scientists ready to document their every death-defying feat of biology. As Sarah finished her explanation of the time-honored human tradition of drink, every time someone says drinking game, she noticed Zix'tharr furiously scribbling notes. "Hey Doc," she called out, an impish grin spreading across her face. "How'd you like to experience a real human party firsthand? I bet we could whip up something epic in the lab. For science, of course." The auditorium fell silent as every alien eye, or sensory organ equivalent, turned to Zix'tharr. The renowned xenobiologist stood frozen for a moment, his compound eyes darting between Sarah's mischievous smile, Dave's encouraging thumbs up, and Gloop's quietly despairing puddle. Finally, Zix'tharr's mandibles clicked in what might have been a nervous gulp or an excited chitter. For science, he agreed solemnly. And with those fateful words, the next chapter in human-alien relations began, one that would involve far more hot sauce, energy drinks, and questionable decision-making than anyone could have possibly anticipated. Somewhere in the background, Gloop let out a long, bubbling sigh. "I'll prepare the emergency detox chambers," he burbled resignedly, "and maybe look into updating my life insurance policy." As the excited crowd of scientists began to file out of the auditorium, chattering animatedly about the possibilities that lay ahead, Sarah turned to Dave with a triumphant grin. "Mission accomplished," she whispered. "Phase 1 of convince aliens humans are basically invincible is complete. Ready for phase 2? Dave cracked his knuckles, a glint of mischief in his eyes. "Oh yeah. Let's show these Xenos how we party on the Deathworld." And so as Zix'tharr led the way to the labs, blissfully unaware of the chaos that was about to unfold, humanity took its first stumbling, possibly intoxicated step towards becoming the galaxy's newest fascination and its biggest headache. The universe, for its part, could only watch in bemused silence, wondering what it had done to deserve the cosmic joke that was human biology. But deep down, in the quantum foam of reality itself, there was a sense of anticipation. After all, things were about to get a whole lot more interesting. And somewhere, on a distant planet that no one had yet thought to explore, a young alien species looked up at a hood if they were alone in the universe. Little did they know, the answer was hurtling towards them at faster-than-light speeds. Armed with hot sauce, a playlist of Earth's greatest party hits, and a burning desire to see just how far they could push the limits of obvious xenobiology. The galaxy would never be the same again, and honestly, it was probably for the best. After all, what's the point of a vast, infinite universe if you can't throw the occasional intergalactic rager? As Sarah and Dave high-fived, ready to introduce the concept of pregaming to their new alien friends, the story of humanity's grand entrance onto the galactic stage was just beginning. And if the looks of mingled terror and fascination on the faces, or face-adjacent appendages, of the alien scientists were in it to go by, it was going to be one hell of a ride. In the grand tapestry of cosmic history, this moment would be remembered as the day the galaxy learned to party, human style. May the universe have mercy on their souls and their livers.